our final inductee crosses the centuries. And in fact, it's a distinction that he was a founding coach of a sport, because before him, the last time that Union had a soccer team for men was never. Back in 1994, he started soccer as a club sport, which of course you're playing different competition than if you become a fully intercollegiate sport. But success was written on it, and in 1998, he became the head coach of the very first Union soccer team. So 25 years now, that the anniversary that we recognize this year. And it became a varsity sport, and he had success written all over him. And you can look at his accomplishments that he's had, but among the most significant is that the Union teams were nationally ranked in the top 20 of the NAIA 6 times in 8 years. And look at this, that they had a region tournament appearance in 2004 and went all the way to the title game in 2005. But this gentleman, and he's gone on to do many other great things in different levels of soccer, but this gentleman was one who I taught in the same building that he did until Jennings Hall was built across the way here. And it was always a pleasure to see him because his smile would light up the halls. He was always just a friend, and one that I enjoyed being around and being a colleague with. And then to see him accomplish what he did as the one who started the soccer program at Union University was a great delight. And so I ask you this evening, would you please welcome our final inductee of the evening, the original men's soccer coach at Union University, Darin White.
All right. I want to start off tonight, like everyone else, thanking the committee for this incredible opportunity. When Tommy called me back about a month or two ago, first of all, my phone rang and said Tommy Sadler, and I don't think I've talked to Tommy Sadler in almost a decade. And so, and I'm like, why is Tommy Sadler calling me? And so I answered the phone, and he said, hey, what are you doing on April 21st? And I was like, I don't know, Tommy. That's a strange question. But so he told me the news, and I have been just incredibly honored ever since that. Ever since that day, I just thought about it over and over again, because Union University, for me, I came here when I was in my mid-20s. And there are so many people in this room, folks that are business professors, deans in the business school, coaches, Coach Blackstock, David Dockery, people like that had such a huge impact on me as a young professor and coach. And so it's really neat for me to get to come back and do this. I've been gone for Union for 14 years. I'm at Samford University now. I've been there for 14 years, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But so I was here for 14, and I've been at Samford for 14, so it's kind of a neat opportunity. I did want to mention another reason I think I got inducted, because I knew you guys knew that it would increase the number of attendees at an event like this, because if y'all know, I have 7 children, and so our whole family and some of the spouses are here as well. So that's that whole table back there. Y'all can wave. So. They were back in the day when I was coaching. They were the ball boys and the ball girls, and they would ride on the bus with the team, and we homeschooled back in those days. And so they're now all grown. Our 2 youngest are at Samford University, but the rest of them are all grown and all that. We also have our friends Pepper and Karen Pratt are with us today, my wife Laura, and my mom and dad, which my mom and dad are affectionately known as Coach Dad and Coach Mom. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But to start with, I really wanted to, Kirk, you really did the best job of sort of setting this up for me. Thank you for doing that. You're probably thinking, how in the world did a marketing professor I mean, a guy's got a Ph.D. in marketing that was hired by Union to teach marketing strategy and marketing research. How in the world did he end up in the Hall of Fame in the athletic department, right? That seems like doesn't it, I've got to be one of the most unusual Hall of Fame, members ever. In fact, raise your hand if you took a class in the business school when you're at Union. How many of you took a class? So several of you in here. I see several of you that I think I might have taught at some point, although it's been a while. But I want to tell you my story about how I came to Union and I think what God was doing through all of that. And so I grew up back in the 1970s and 1980s when soccer was not that big of a thing in the United States of America. It's grown in popularity quite a bit, and it's a very different position than we are now. Back when I was growing up, again, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and if you know anything about Birmingham, Alabama, that is the heart of college football. That is where the SEC headquarters is at, right? I actually lived next door to the commissioner of the SEC for a while, believe it or not. And so it's where the Iron Bowl is played, or at least it was until they messed that up. But it was played there forever and ever and ever. And so college football is king in Birmingham, Alabama. So to grow up in that environment as a soccer kid, that was a difficult thing, actually. I was sort of a soccer missionary in a lot of ways, right? And so back in those days, I would hunt for soccer content on TV or wherever. And really, there was only one show on TV, and it was called Soccer Made in Germany. Anybody remember watching Soccer Made in Germany? Probably not many of you. It came on once a month for 30 minutes, and no, it wasn't on ESPN. It was on another major sports broadcasting company. You might have heard of them, PBS. And so, yeah, it's on PBS. You can look it up. There's a Wikipedia page on it. And so that was the only soccer content on TV anywhere. And so that was my whole life growing up was sort of like that. I went on to I played on the very first travel soccer team in Birmingham in 1976. I went on to play in high school. I was on the very first ODP team in the state, the Olympic Development Team. I was one of the first to come out of my high school to go on to play collegiately and get a soccer scholarship. I played at Birmingham Southern on the second ever scholarship team at Birmingham Southern. So I really was a soccer missionary, if you will. I really helped bring soccer to our state, even here at Stanford, as you just brought up, right, is being the founding coach. And so there just seems to be something about that about my life, and that's always been really fun. But after I graduated from Birmingham Southern in 1989, and I kind of thought my soccer career was over, and I was going to put sports behind me, and I was going to move on, and I decided to go get a Ph.D. in strategy and marketing at the University of Alabama. And this is, again, I was 22 years old when I started that, and I was determined that this was it. I was done with sports. I'd done that. Now it was time to move on, and so I wanted to be a big-time academic. I wanted to go get a Ph.D. and go to a big-time school like Michigan or Harvard or somewhere like that, right, and write research papers and be a scholar, and that's what I was going to do. And so for 4 years, I worked on my Ph.D., and I didn't watch a single soccer game. I didn't even think about soccer anymore, really, for those 4 years. But what I found is I learned as I was getting close to the point of graduating with my Ph.D. that while I had my plans, God had a very different plan. And there's actually a verse in Proverbs. It's Proverbs 16:9. And it says, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. And my goodness, has that definitely been true in my life as I look back right now. And over the last 20 years, I've seen that happen over and over again. And so as I was graduating from Alabama with my Ph.D. with the intention of going out to a big school somewhere, I had a friend of mine who was in the Ph.D. program who came up here and interviewed at Union University. And he came back the next week, and he came into my office, and he said, Darin, you're not going to believe this. I interviewed at the strangest school. He said it was a school up in West Tennessee, and they wanted me to write a statement of faith, like about my Christian faith, kind of thing. And then they told me that if I was going to teach there, that I'd actually have to go to church. Like that was a real deal. And then they even said I had to sign a contract saying that I wouldn't drink alcohol. And so these were all things, and he was just beside himself. He couldn't believe this. And so he told the dean of the business school up here, he said, I'm probably not a good fit, but there's this weird Christian guy that's in our program at Alabama that might be a really good fit for you. And so he told him about me, and because I was that weird Christian guy in the Ph.D. program. And so the business school dean here called me, and about a week later, we decided to come up. My wife and I decided to come up here and interview. Now, again, my plan was to go to a big school somewhere. I had never been on a Christian college campus. I didn't even know something like this existed. This was foreign to me. So we came up here, truthfully, I'll just be totally truthful. We came up here with the thought of, let's just go practice interview. There'll be a great practice interview opportunity for us. And so we spent the day on campus, and I'll never forget it. Office after office, interview after interview, Christ kept coming up over and over again. The Bible kept getting opened. And I was like, what is happening right now? This has never happened in my entire higher education life. And so my wife was having the same experience with, she was being taken out by all the wives of the faculty members and all that. And so when we got back to the hotel that night, and I think it was the DoubleTree, if I remember correctly, we came in, we had not seen each other all day. We came into the hotel room that night, and both of us had the exact same reaction. We literally thought we had found the Garden of Eden. Like Genesis 3 Garden of Eden is Union University, okay? I mean, I'm not kidding you. We really did. We thought, okay, we're the cherubim. Clearly they weren't at the gate because we got in somehow, but we thought we had found, heaven on earth. And so when we had the opportunity then to get an offer to come here and start our career here, there was no doubt that we were going to come. And so we did, with enthusiasm, we came here. And so again, my plan was to do something very different, but God's plan was to, his guidance of my steps was very different. So that was 1994, as you mentioned a minute ago. And so I was here, I was on the business faculty, teaching business strategy, teaching in the MBA program, doing these sorts of things. Sports was behind me still, right? I was not in any way, but I did start kind of playing and coaching on this club team that we had here on campus, but it was a really minor thing. It wasn't that big of a deal. And then in 1998, the next big shock came. And that was when Dr. Dockery and Coach Blackstock offered me the opportunity to start a men's soccer program at Union University, and I never had even dreamed of such a thing. And so, with the counsel of my wife, and I'll say this to the younger guys in the room, many times I had my plans, but God was leading my steps. Well, He led my steps so many times through my wife. It was through the wisdom of my wife that He did that, and that was definitely the case over and over again in this sense. And so we ended up launching the soccer program in 1998, and for 8 years I got to coach the sport I love, learned how to coach, and then on top of all of that, I got to do it with my dad. So again, I mentioned that Coach Dad is in the room, if you remember him. And so Coach Dad retired from Pfizer Pharmaceuticals after a Hall of Fame career there and from Washington, D.C., way up in the company, big prestigious titles and things like that. Retires and comes to Union University. I was about 2 or 3 years into my program, coaching my program, and he takes, we gave him an elevated title and role of Union bus driver, and so that was his job, was to drive the bus. And so, he didn't. Yeah, it was a little bit of a pay cut, I think, but that's what he did. And so we just had an incredible time for 8 years coaching that team. And I will say, if you look at my coaching career prior to him coming and then after coming, there's a big difference in terms of wins and losses and success. And so I learned so much from my dad over those years in terms of how to lead people. And that was really how many sons get to do that, right? Get to actually coach a college team with their dad. And then we went on after Union to coach many club teams as well. Club teams here in Tennessee. We actually helped start a club in Memphis called the Tennessee Rush, and then even teams down in Alabama, and got the opportunity to win state championships with several of my kids on the field. And so that was those were some really cool days. And so now, final part right here. So as I'm doing these things, so as I'm coaching and teaching, I'm still thinking in my mind, what in the world's going on? Like, what is God really up to here? I'm like spending half of my day as an academic writing research papers, teaching classes and all that. And then the second half of my day, I'm recruiting, I'm wearing a whistle, I'm out on the soccer field. I mean, these two things have nothing to do with each other, right? I mean, they're totally different things. And so I was always praying and asking God, what are you up to? What are you doing? Well, in 2009, we found the answer. In 2009, Birmingham, and let's say home came a calling, right? We had the opportunity to move back home, and it really took something like Sanford University being back in the home where my wife and I both grew up to get us to leave Union, because we loved this place, and we still do love Union University so much. But the opportunity to take our family and go back to our roots where we grew up. I literally now live a mile from where I grew up, in Vestavia Hills, Alabama, and get to go back there. It was just too much. So we packed up the moving van. We put all the kids, in there. We played Sweet Home Alabama as we drove south down to Birmingham. We really did we not? We did over, and I think I scarred them for life. We did it over and over again as we drove home to Alabama, and went back to where we grew up. And so in the 10 years since then, the 14 years since then, I'm really starting to see what God was doing while I was here at Union. So what am I doing today? So today at Union, I run the Center for Sports Analytics. We actually started the very first program in sports analytics, second program in the nation, first in the South. If you've ever seen the movie, how many of you seen the movie Moneyball? Seen Moneyball? Awesome movie, right? We have an academic program in Moneyball. So if you want to, be the next Billy Bean, come on, let's do it, right? And so we have students from all over the country that come, and when they graduate, they leave and they go do Moneyball type work. Some on the business side of sports, some on the team side of sports. We have students from everywhere from the Tampa Bay Rays. I have one graduating next week that's going to the Vikings, LA Clippers, Hawks, on and on it goes. Now, if you would have told me, again, 20 years ago, that that's what I would be doing, I would have said, you're crazy, and there's no way. And yet God knew that. God was directing my steps to bring me here to Union, to prepare me, to help me coach, to help me learn how to teach, to do all these things so that we could do these things today. And then the final thing that I'm getting to be involved in today is an organization called the Daniel Summit. And I had the opportunity to help start that organization with a guy named Jeremy Walls, who is the Senior Vice President of Revenue with the Miami Dolphins. He's become a very good friend of mine. Jeremy's a believer. He played baseball at Mount Vernon Nazarene. You probably coached against him at one point, I would bet. But when he graduated, he went on to work in sports, and his dream was to be Daniel from the Old Testament, in the world of sports. And so he saw Daniel as this guy that was a political consultant working in the world in Babylon, the pagan nation of Babylon, yet having an incredible impact for the kingdom while he was doing that for 70 years. And so Jeremy's goal was to do that in sports. Well, he and I became very good friends while I was at Stanford, and we've created what's called the Daniel Summit. And so what is the Daniel Summit? The Daniel Summit is a gathering of followers of Christ that work on the business side of sports. So if you work on the business side, not coaches, not players, that's what the FCA does, right? This is for people who work on the business side of sports that basically run sports in our country. And we get together every year and have a 2-day conference where we just encourage each other to figure out ways to use the considerable cultural influence that we have. Because if you work in sports, you have a lot of cultural influence. So how do we leverage that, like Daniel in the Old Testament, to bring glory to Christ? And that's what the Daniel Summit's all about. So if you're in the room and you work on the business side of sports, college or pro, I invite you to come. We would love to have you. Our next gathering is going to be in February, the weekend after the Super Bowl, and it's going to be Louis Giglio is hosting us at Passion City Church in Atlanta. And so we're excited about that. Our last gathering, we had about 350 executives from every league across, from the NBA to the NFL, and it's just a really, really cool organization. And what God is doing through that organization is just remarkable. And the fact that I get to be involved in that is so humbling to me that that's the case. And Union University and God guiding my steps to bring me here to do the things that I got to do, that's why we're able to do the things that we're doing today. And so that's my Union story. And it's very unusual. I know that, and that's where we are. So I want to end with this. I want to end with another one of my favorite verses, and it's out of Proverbs. It's Proverbs 3:5-6, and it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." So, thank you.